that whole distance thing, and that I was beginning to think this thing is starting to go into orbit. My name is Randy Erie, and I'm pleased to be with a company by the name of Dart Drones. And our website is dartdrones.com, and I've been with them now for about 6 years. Dart Drones is a company that's headquartered in Utah. The CEO is Abby Spiker Carroll. She's been on Shark Tank. I would encourage all of your viewers to check us out on the website. I do training for Dart Drones here in Phoenix. I've trained in Seattle and Denver and Salt Lake City, so I've had a great time just traveling around and training first responders, police departments, fire departments, those looking to get into aviation at a ground level, if you will. The question that I'm asked many times is, how did I get into drones, right? So as a private pilot, and I have been for many years, in about 2016, I started to read, as many of us did, about drones. So these things were just suddenly starting to fly off the shelves at Fry's Ultimate Electronics, the Apple Store, other places, Amazon. And so I thought, I'm going to check this out because, a good pilot is always learning. And I'd started with the microwhoops, tormenting the cat. The cat died, so I had no one else to torment. And I thought, I'd take my knowledge and my experience a little bit further. And so when the FAA announced basically in 2015 that they were opening up the rulemaking board for drones, seeking feedback from industry groups. At that point, I began to see those articles, began to see those on the FAA website. And so when the FAA announced in 2016 the exam, August 29th, that was the first day that you could actually take and pass the FAA, the remote pilot exam. I got mine that day, but I went through a different route called the Part 61 because I was already a licensed and current private pilot. So I did the training through the FAA website, went out to the FSDO, and they checked me off, and I got my license in that manner. And the crazy thing is that when I got my temporary 107, my temporary UAS license, I showed it to my wife. I showed it to her. Name is Connie, and we've been married for, it'll be 42 years this year. But in 2016, I showed her my license, and I said, I got my drone license today. And she looked at me very quizzically, and keep in mind, she's very supportive of everything that I do in aviation, but she looked at me very quizzically and said, why? And so I had the foresight, just something that popped into mind. I said, because this is going to be big. And so at that point, who knew, right? At that point, we're talking about toys. And so I had flown the microwhoops, and I did some research. I thought, well, it's probably time to move beyond these little tiny toys, right? Because at that point, I had my 107 license, but I didn't really have a drone. So I did some research and found that a company by the name of DJI, Dejang Innovations, headquartered in Shenzhen, China, really was the market leader. They were building a drone that was easy to fly, that wouldn't crash. Because up until that point, my experience, other than the little microwhoops, which I loved to crash inadvertently, more often than not, I thought, well, I'm going to kind of expand my horizons. I'm a private pilot. I can fly generally anywhere on a compass heading. I should be able to fly one of these things, right? So I went to Fry's Ultimate Electronics. I think they were having a sale on these things. They were like $39, so I bought one. And so I took it home and I charged it, and my first flight went right into the ceiling in our living room and exploded. I thought, well, I can't have that. So I go back to Fry's Electronics, right? I know the warranty's not going to cover a crash. I buy another one. At this point, I say, I've got this figured out. I just go fly it in the backyard. So I go out in the backyard, charge it up, I go in the backyard and I fly it again. It's rising in altitude, and it gets to the roof of the house, and as you know, in the field of aviation, we know this, right? Is that our mind, our eyes, our ears, our body sensation tends to lie to us a little bit. And at that point, that whole distance thing, and that I was beginning to think this thing is starting to go into orbit, right? It's going to, what do I do? Not realizing that my thumb was still stuck on the throttle. And so then, once I realized that, take my hands off, it comes back, hits the surface of the earth in our backyard, explodes. I go back to fries. At this point, they know me by name. I buy a third one, right? And to this day, it's never been charged. It's a beautiful little skeleton helicopter. It sits on my desk at home as an example of what abject failure is. So that's a constant reminder to me, right? Again, that whole, the FAA identifies 5 different anti-authoritarian behaviors, and I was probably guilty of all of those, thinking that I could fly one of these things when I really couldn't, because that whole attitude is, I got this, and I didn't. And so it was a very short time later, I initiated a conversation with a company by the name of Dart Drones, and interviewed with the CEO, Abby, and was very fortunate to get hired. And it's just been a labor of love since then. I love what I do. I love, there are all kinds of specializations in the area of the drone world, mapping, inspections, and things along this line. What I love especially, though, is teaching those that are new to the field of aviation, because the barriers to entry in aviation are much less expensive. The steps are not as many, if you will. Going through, the drone side, getting your 107 license, understanding airspace, those conditions when you can fly, when you can't fly, and just understanding your own body's capabilities when it comes to flying a drone. It's like flying an airplane, right? And we're held to that same standard under Part 91, right? Once we receive our 107 license, we're held to that higher standard. So it's been a labor of love for me. I've had the privilege of training police departments, fire departments in Seattle, Salt Lake, Denver, Phoenix, and it's been great to see, because initially when the first responders were coming, someone was making them come, right? Somebody said, well, take the class, because the classes that we teach are 2-day class. The Saturday is an all-day flight session. We learn, we teach. People come in with no drone experience on how to fly a drone. It's a DJI product. Nowadays, though, I train on the Mavics, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Pro. And then the second day, the Sundays, are an FAA ground school, if you will, because that's what they are. The FAA will test you on about 13 areas. Even the new test, the test has been updated over the course of the past year. And so our ground school covers those areas. It's all day. So that so in conjunction with then the practice tests through dartdrones.com, the student is prepared to actually take and pass the test. And to date, I've not had anybody, knock on wood, that's not passed the exam. And that's just a wonderful thing for me. Like I said, it's a labor of love. I love introducing those to the field of aviation that don't have any background. But you can specialize in mapping and surveying, inspections, all kinds of areas. And so we see a lot of groups nowadays using drones for search and rescue. The Arizona Civil Air Patrol has many within the wing that are trained to use drones nowadays, and I've been involved with that in my CAP Squadron 314 Black Sheep Squadron out in Scottsdale. So again, it's just it's been a lot of fun. It is very serious, though, and that we're not flying toys. Once properly registered with these particular drones, right, as long as they weigh 250 grams, 8.8 ounces, they have to be properly registered with the FAA, much like a general aviation aircraft, right? They're treated the same way. We have the same right to the airspace, but what comes with that airspace is the responsibility of knowing when we can fly, when we need a waiver, when we need permission, and these sorts of things.